Yo, what's up, dudes? Just wanted to talk about Giant's Blood today. A couple things with it that I just think need to be tweaked. Check this out. If you don't know, of course, Giant's Blood, you can wield two-handed axes, maces, and swords in one hand, triple attribute requirements of martial weapons. Now here's the problem. It makes the triple requirement happen, and that kind of makes sense because you're taking a two-hander and now putting it in one hand. But then it just says of martial weapons. So if I have just say a one-handed weapon now, look at this. This is a flanged mace. Strength on this one-handed weapon is 459 strength now. That's with a gemling ascendancy that reduces requirements, by the way. So I have 4%, 4%. That's 12% reduced requirements with Giant's Blood here. And I'm still having, this is still a 459 strength requirement. This is a one-handed weapon. So I don't think that that's how that should work. I think that it should give triple requirements for the two-handed weapons that it affects. Because that way you could maybe use a one-hander on swap or something still. I guess you could use weapon set passives to avoid that, but anyway, I just think it shouldn't work that way. The other thing is that it would be really cool if Giant's Blood also gave a boon to two-handed weapons when you actually wield them in two hands. So you get the triple requirement, right? But then what if you also received an attack speed and damage buff for taking that two-hander and using it in two hands? Maybe they just don't want to make players have to take this node. Maybe they just don't want you to feel like you have to take it if you're using a two-hander. But my point here is that the requirements become so high, maybe you should get some kind of other benefit for that. And if you're stronger, if you have Giant's Blood and you're holding something in two hands now as opposed to one, don't you think you'd be able to hit harder and faster with that two-hander? So I think it wouldn't be unreasonable to take this node, and then when you're taking the two-hander in two hands, it also gives you like 18% or 15% attack speed and 25% attack damage or melee damage or something like that. The other thing is that just for maces, it might be beneficial to add in a skill gem or even tweak mace strike a little bit for two-handers so that it operates a bit more like Ice Strike on the monk. So Ice Strike has 3 hits to it with a bit of AoE, especially on that third hit. And it does have a little bit of a dash. Now, you don't want it to feel exactly the same because then it's just too much alike, but I like that quick step that Ice Strike gives you. And I think if the warrior with Giant's Blood, a little bit faster with a two-hander, they've got a bit of a step, and then like that, it would probably make melee two-handed maces feel pretty good, So either adding a skill gem that works kind of like Ice Strike for two-handed maces, or changing Mace Strike for two-handers to operate kind of like Ice Strike, that might be cool. So anyway, those are my thoughts on Giant's Blood. I just thought it probably shouldn't work this way, where you're getting this huge requirement just on a one-handed weapon. If anything, shouldn't the requirements go down on the one-handed weapons? And remember, this is with reduced requirements from the gemling ascendancy right here. Look, 4, 4, and 4. That's 12% reduced requirements. So I just think they need to change that. All right. Let me know what you think about Giant's Blood, if these are good ideas, if you think this is something that should be implemented. I think it would help, choices and build variety and all that. And it'll be a lot cooler once the axes and maces come into the game. All right, thanks. Talk to you guys later. Bye.